So I want to talk today about using technology in classrooms, but one of the really interesting things about me is that I'm actually enormously skeptical of technology, kind of across the board. And nobody ever believes this. Like every book that I read is a physical book. I go to the airport and buy a book every time I fly because I just don't trust my Kindle and it breaks and it runs out of batteries. And so it's a very surprising perspective as the CEO of a technology company when I go and I talk about the fact that actually some of the very best technology is pencil and paper, is turning to the person sitting next to you and having a conversation, is building up a real relationship between a teacher and a student. But it also gives me a nice fresh perspective on what are the times when it is worth breaking out technology. As a technology skeptic, when is it still the right thing to do? And there's a few things that just fire me up and get me up in the morning about ways that technology can have a really substantial impact on students in a classroom. So the three that I wanted to talk about briefly today, which have been just focuses of my life and things that I hope when you're looking at technology, evaluating technology, that these come to your mind as well. So one of them is the impact that technology can have on equity and on access. The second one is how technology can help with accessibility, how it can bridge gaps and support students who have learning disabilities or physical disabilities, and make it so that they can participate with their peers. And then the third one is the way that technology can support differentiation and the version of differentiation that gets me excited. So I want to just go through each of these briefly. So the first one is about equity and access. And if you look at the long arc of human history, it always follows a very similar pattern, where technology first benefits a very small fraction of humanity, generally the wealthy, the well-connected, but over time, technology ends up being this enormous equalizer. And we see this now where, for example, more people have access to cell phones in the world than have access to toothbrushes, an astonishing and true fact. And so you see around the world that people have access to the internet, that people have access to banking services through these devices that are now as ubiquitous as bicycles. And we're starting to see the same thing happen with technology in classrooms in a way that gets me so excited. The first of these is networking, is access, is the fact that through a bunch of efforts at the government level down to the school level, more and more schools have good internet. And this is so critical since the internet is one of the most incredible innovations and equalizing forces in access to knowledge. And the second is actually the hardware, where now you can buy a fully powered computer, a Chromebook, for the same cost as a physical textbook or as a handheld graphing calculator. And in addition to having a book, it also has the entire internet and a graphing calculator. You have all of these things in a package that's now sub $150. It's really extraordinary, the impact that we believe that can have on giving every single student equal access to information and to exploration and to knowledge. So whenever we think about how historically societies have become more and more equitable over time, we think the two enormous forces are widespread propagation of technology and public education. And when you combine these two things, I think of it as kind of the peanut butter and jelly of fighting inequality. The second one, which is really recently exciting to us, is accessibility. And so a little bit of a backstory there. We, a couple years ago, got an email from a fellow whose mother was a math teacher and told him, Desmos is the cat's meow, you should try it. And he says, I can't because I'm blind, and everything on Desmos is completely visual. And he sends us an email, and we ended up hiring him on the spot and said, can you imagine how to make it so that Desmos can work for you? And over the last couple years, he's done just extraordinary things and taught us all so much about web content accessibility guidelines and some of these web standards, but also best practices and how to work with refreshable braille displays and how to make it so that you can play a graph as sound. And the result of this has been some of the most exciting and inspiring work that we've seen. Just being connected to this world of folks who use technology to give access to people who otherwise wouldn't have access. And so with us, it's around graphing, but there's also just incredible innovations around making it so that folks in a wheelchair can climb up stairs and making it so that people who are colorblind can see colors. It's extraordinary the power of technology to close gaps between people who otherwise would have them because of a disability. And the third way that we see technology as just so exciting is around differentiation. And a lot of folks, especially in math, when they think about differentiation, they think about having every student in their own compartment, doing their own work, independent of everyone else, serving them the perfect little nugget of a problem for them. And this is actually a vision I find pretty depressing. When you look at a classroom where every student is inside of their own container, you're missing so much of what makes education powerful. It's learning to communicate with others. It's learning to teach others. It's learning to be critical in a way that's respectful and to understand that people have different perspectives, to persuade, to convince. All of this just goes away. And in other subjects, the way differentiation is handled, I find really inspiring. Think about a history class where the student who's really advanced, the teacher says, okay, you're done with the Civil War, you got through everything there is to know about that, go on to World War II. It would just never happen because you could explore the Civil War for your entire life. And one of the things that technology allows for is to have many students working on the same problem, but to allow them to explore at different depths. And so again, just from personal experience, an example of this that we saw in early days would be you're learning about conic sections, and the teacher gives you an assignment that says, draw your favorite cartoon character using conic sections. And there's a student who is going to draw Mickey Mouse using 3 circles, and that's going to be a stretch, and they're going to be really proud of what they make. And there's also going to be the student next to them who makes a graph with 150 equations of SpongeBob SquarePants. And each of them can learn from the other. Each of them is doing the same task. They're just able to explore it at different depths. And technology is, when it's used right, it enables that kind of differentiation in a way that we're really excited about. So whenever I'm evaluating technology, and I hope this is true for you as well, the 3 things that I look for are, does this help with equity and access? Is this equitable technology that can support every single student? Where possible, is it accessible? Is this something that can close gaps between people with disabilities and people without? And most of all, does this technology support the learning for students at a wide range of abilities when they're coming in without separating them, but with actually bringing them together? My dream classroom is social and it is creative, and anytime technology supports that, I'm excited about it.